The history of how we were put into the commerce game. On April 5, 1933, then-President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, under Executive Order, issued April 5, 1933, declared, all persons are required to deliver on or before May 1, 1933 all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates now owned by them to a Federal Reserve Bank, branch or agency, or to any member bank of the Federal Reserve System. James A. Farley, Postmaster General at that time, required each postmaster in the country to post a copy of the executive order in a conspicuous place within each branch of the post office. On the bottom of the posting was the following: criminal penalties for violation of executive order. $10,000 fine or 10 years imprisonment, or both, as provided in Section 9 of the order. Section 9 of the order reads as follows: whosoever willfully violates any provisions of this executive order or of these regulations or of any rule, regulation or license issued thereunder may be fined not more than $10,000, or if a natural person, may be imprisoned for not more than 10 years, or both, and any officer, director or agency of any corporation who knowingly participates in any such violation may be punished by a like fine, imprisonment, or both. Note, stated within a written document received September 17, 1997, from the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Legal Counsel, Office of the Deputy Assistant Attorney General, Richard L. Schiffen, in response to a Freedom of Information Act (FOIA), was the following: a fact that is frequently overlooked is that executive orders and proclamations of the President normally have no direct effect upon private persons or their property, and instead, normally constitute only directives or instructions to officers or employees of the federal government. The exception is those cases in which the President is expressly authorized or required by laws enacted by the Congress to issue an executive order or proclamation dealing with the legal rights or obligations of members of the public. Such an issuance of selective service regulations, establishment of boards to investigate certain labor disputes, and establishment of quotas or fees with respect to certain imports into this country. Note, it seems rather obvious that President Franklin D. Roosevelt was not expressly authorized or required to issue an executive order or proclamation demanding the public private to relinquish their privately held gold. The order proclamation issued by Roosevelt was an undisciplined act of treason. 2 months after the executive order, on June 5, 1933, the Senate and House of Representatives, 73D Congress, first session, at 4:30 p.m. approve House Joint Resolution 192 HJR 192 Joint Resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, Joint Resolution to assure uniform value to the coins and currencies of the United States. HJR 192 states, in part, that every provision contained in or made with respect to any obligation which purports to give the oblige a right to require payment in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency, or in any amount of money of the United States measured thereby, is declared to be against public policy, and no such provision shall be contained in or made with respect to any obligation hereafter incurred. Every obligation, heretofore or hereafter incurred, whether or not any such provisions as contained therein are made with respect thereto, shall be discharged upon payment, dollar for dollar, in any such coin or currency which at the time of payment is legal tender for public and private debts. HJR 192 goes on to state, as used in this resolution, the term obligation means an obligation including every obligation of and to the United States, excepting currency payable in money of the United States, and the term coin or currency means coin or currency of the United States, including Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of Federal Reserve banks and national banking associations. HJR 192 superseded public law. What passes as law today is only color of law, replacing it with public policy. This eliminated our ability to pay our debts, allowing only for their discharge. When we use any commercial paper, checks, drafts, warrants, Federal Reserve notes, etc., and accept it as money, we simply pass the unpaid debt attached to the paper on to others, by way of our purchases and transactions. This unpaid debt, under public policy, now carries a public liability for its collection. In other words, all debt is now public. The United States government, in order to provide necessary goods and services, created a commercial bond promissory note, by pledging the property, labor, life and body of its citizens, as payment for the debt bankruptcy. This commercial bond made chattel property out of every man, woman and child in the United States. We became nothing more than human resources and collateral for the debt. This was without our knowledge and or our consent. How? It was done through the filing registration of our birth certificates. The United States government, actually the elected and appointed administrators of government, took, and still do, to this day, certified copies of all our birth certificates and placed them in the United States Department of Commerce, as registered securities. These securities, each of which carries an estimated $1 million value, have been, and still are, circulated around the world as collateral for loans, entries on the asset side of ledgers, etc., just like any other security. There's just one problem: we didn't authorize it. The United States is a District of Columbia corporation. In Volume 20, Corpus Juris Sec., Section 1785, we find the United States government as a foreign corporation with respect to a state. C. Ny Re. Miriam 36 Ne. 505-1441 S 0.1973, 14 L. ed. 287. Since a corporation is a fictitious person, it cannot speak, see, touch, smell, etc., it cannot, by itself, function in the real world. It needs a conduit, a transmitting utility, a liaison of some sort to connect the fictional person and fictional world in which it exists, to the real world. Living people exist in a real world, not a fictional, virtual world. But government does exist in a fictional world, and can only deal directly with other fictional or virtual persons, agencies, states, etc. In order for a fictional person to deal with real people, there must be a connection, a liaison, and a go-between. This can be something as simple as a contract. When both persons, the real and the fictional, agree to the terms of a contract, there is a connection, intercourse, dealings, there is a communication, an exchange, an understanding. There is business. But there is another way for fictional government to deal with the real man and woman, through the use of a representative, a liaison, and the go-between. Who is this go-between, this liaison that connects fictional government to real men and women? It's a government-created shadow, a fictional character with the exact same name as ours. This person was created by using our birth certificates as the manufacturer's certificate of origin (MCO) and the state in which we were born as the port of entry. This gave fictional government a fictional person with whom to deal directly. This person is called a straw man. Stramineus homo, Latin, a man of straw, one of no substance, put forward as bail or surety. This definition comes from Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, page 1421. Following the definition of stramineus homo in Black's, we find the next word, strawman, a front, a third party who is put up in name only to take part in a transaction. Nominal party to a transaction, one who acts as an agent for another for the purposes of taking title to real property and executing whatever documents and instruments the principal may direct. Person who purchases property for another to conceal identity of real purchaser or to accomplish some purpose otherwise not allowed. Webster's 9th New Collegiate Dictionary defines the term straw man as 1. A weak or imaginary opposition set up only to be easily confuted. 2. Person set up to serve as a cover for a usually questionable transaction. The strawman can be summed up as an imaginary, passive stand-in for the real participant, a front, a blind, a person regarded as a nonentity. The strawman is a shadow, a go-between. For quite some time, a rather large number of people in this country have known that a man or woman's name, written in all capital letters or last name first, does not identify real, living people. Taking this one step further, the rules of grammar for the English language have no provisions for the abbreviation of people's names, i.e. initials are not to be used. As an example, John Adam Smith is correct. Anything else is not correct. Not Smith, John Adam or Smith, John A or J Smith or J. A. Smith or John Adam Smith or Smith, John or any other variation. Nothing other than John Adam Smith actually identifies the real, living man, and all other appellations identify either a deceased man or a fictitious man such as a corporation. See Black's Law, Capitis Diminutio Maxima. Over the years government, through its public school system, has managed to pull the wool over our eyes and keep us ignorant of some very important facts. Because all facets of the media, print, radio, television, have an ever-increasing influence in our lives, and because media is controlled, with the issuance of licenses, etc., by government and its agencies, we have slowly and systematically been led to believe that any form, appellation of our names is, in fact, still us as long as the spelling is correct. Wrong. We were never told. We were never told, with full and open disclosure, what our government officials were planning to do and why. We were never told that government, the United States, was a corporation, a fictitious person. We were never told that government had quietly, almost secretly, created a shadow, a straw man for each and every American, so that they could not only control the people, but also raise an almost unlimited amount of revenue. We were never told that the government only deals with the fictional straw man and never with real, living, mortal men and women. We were never told, openly and clearly, with full disclosure of all the facts, that since June 5, 1933 we have been unable to pay our debts. We were never told that we had been pledged, and our children, and their children, and their children, and on, as collateral, mere chattel, for the debt created by government officials. We were never told that they quietly and cleverly changed the rules, even the game itself, and that the world we perceive is in fact a fictional one created for their benefit. We were never told that the straw man, a fictional person, a creature of the state, is subject to all the codes, statutes, rules, regulations, ordinances decreed by the corporate government, but that we, the real mortal men and women, are not. We were never told we were being treated as property or slaves, albeit comfortably for some, through our consent while having the option of true freedom. There's something else you should know. Everything, since June 1933, operates in commerce. Commerce is based on an agreement or contract, and the corporate government has an implied or presumed agreement or consent via the 14th Amendment U.S. citizenship that is the straw man. It is only the straw man that is subject to government policy or rule. But when we, the mortal flesh and blood men and women, step into their creation, we become the surety or hostage for their fictional character and assume their debts, liabilities and obligations. Additionally, as the straw man, we relinquish our Article 4 constitutional standing and the common law. We now only live in the private commercial courtrooms of Article 1 legislative tribunals under public policy. Every penny of the unquestionable public debt, every liability and every obligation exist only in the fictional commercial world of book entries on computers or in paper ledgers. It is a world of digits and notes devoid of real money, value, or substance. It is the world of the private Federal Reserve and its unlawful fiat currency. It is a world where no man or private property can exist. It is a world deception, fraud, and slavery by consent. Everybody and everything in this private corporation known as the United States is simply collateral for the bonds issued by the U.S. government. The fictional person can only function in a fictional commercial world where there is no real money, only fictional funds. A presentment from a fictional government is nothing but a negative, commercial, claim against the straw man. This claim takes place in the commercial, fictional world of government. Digits move from one side of your straw man account to the other or to a different account entirely. This is today's commerce. You are today's commerce.